And I must say, I kind of approached today's debate with kind of mixed feelings, and particularly walking through Westminster Hall. On the way to this debate this morning, there was a young group of school kids, and I observed a young girl looking at all of the statues all the way along St Stephen's Hall this morning. So I think that probably does reaffirm the point that sometimes this House every day is Men's Day. Nonetheless, I do welcome the opportunity to take part in the debate, and I want to use my speech, however brief, to talk about men's health, both physical and mental, the important work done by men's sheds, and finally, locker room banter. And before going any further, I'd like to congratulate the honourable gentleman, the member for Stafford, for initiating today's debate. Last week, alongside Councillor Michelle Ferns, I had the pleasure of visiting Shettleston Men's Shed in my constituency. It's run by William Smiley, who clearly has a passion for the project and has invested a considerable amount of personal effort and time into getting it off the ground in conjunction with the Shettleston Housing Association. The Men's Shed supports approximately 60 guys who come together twice a week to play darts, pool and do woodwork, among other activities. And during my visit on Friday, I met Billy Thompson, who was attending the Men's Shed for the first time. And Billy, quite movingly, told me about his struggles with poor mental health and the support afforded to him by Parkview Health Centre, which signposted him to Shettleston Men's Shed. And I was quite struck, actually, by Billy's candour when he said that just 3 weeks ago he was in a very dark place indeed, whereby he considered if he even wanted to be alive anymore. And fast forward 3 weeks, and Billy is now sitting in a men's shed talking quite openly about his mental health. And I think that's very powerful. However, there is a legitimate point to be made about the funding for such groups, because it's often sorely lacking. And I don't want to be a politician that simply pays lip service without banging the drum for more funding, particularly about supporting running costs for what is an excellent project, undoubtedly saving money for the National Health Service. So I think that should be put on the record. Mr Austin, I want to briefly address the issue of what has been dubbed locker room banter, which has been a topic of conversation in recent days that has finally been a light that's been shone in this building concerning the abhorrent nature with which some men talk, view and act towards women. We know all too well the comments made by President Trump when in 2005, talking of a woman, he said, "Just grab them by the pussy." Later, when trying to defend frankly the indefensible, he suggested that it had just been locker room banter, a kind of soft phrase which seeks to play down the seriousness of a conversation which would rightly turn the stomach of most men. And I think as legislators and leaders in our communities, we all have a responsibility to challenge the culture of locker room banter which still exists, not least within this building, as events in recent days and weeks have shown. In my remaining time, Mr Austin, I want to talk about mental health and suicide, and I'm particularly grateful to Craig Smith from the Scottish Association for Mental Health for providing me with an excellent briefing with some statistics which make, I'm afraid, some pretty distressing reading. And much has been said in this debate about suicide, and I want to offer just a few thoughts from a Scottish context, because 728 suicides were registered in Scotland in 2016 compared to 672 in 2015. That's the first increase in deaths by suicide for 6 years, which is absolutely shocking, and I think should cause real alarm for those of us who are Scottish politicians and indeed the Scottish Government. And we know that when it comes to general health and well-being, that in 1 year, more than twice as many females consulted GPs for depression and anxiety than males did. So that's why I was pleased to learn that SAMH, in partnership with the Scottish Professional Football League and Hibernian Football Club, recently launched a new programme, The Changing Rooms, to promote men's mental health and well-being. The aim is to increase the social connectedness of men in their middle years and deliver a programme of activity that will reduce loneliness and ultimately improve their mental health and well-being. I think that's a good thing, and that it should be commended in this House of Commons. But I want to conclude, Mr Austin, my remarks with a personal story, so I hope you'll indulge me for just a moment. A couple of weeks after being elected to this House in June, I got a phone call from my mother to tell me that my older brother had been admitted to the psychiatric unit at Wishaw General Hospital. My brother is 5 years older than me and considerably better looking. But he and I have always had quite a kind of jovial relationship, and perhaps due to the age gap, I must confess that we've never really had that kind of relationship that provokes deep emotional conversations. And so as I left Westminster and flew back home to Scotland, and I was driving over to Wishaw General Hospital, I found myself really pondering, as I got onto that word, how do I approach Ross? How do I talk about this? And on one hand, I thought to myself, should I just retreat to the comfort zone of being a jovial, humorous approach of manning up and telling him to just get on with it? or should I step out of my comfort zone and actually have a conversation with them about our feelings and our thoughts? And I'm glad to say that I did actually do the kind of brave thing, and we did have that conversation, and it was a conversation that was very, very brief. But I think that's probably the most significant conversation that we in our lives as brothers have ever had. And in retrospect, I think that conversation showed that for men, it's important that we sometimes step out of our comfort zone if we're to truly step up. But for fear of getting emotional, I just want to conclude by saying, after my visit to Shelton Men's Shed and what happened in the summer, I was drawn to a bit of scripture in the Old Testament, which says, "As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend." And I think that those of us in this House would do well to read and reflect on that.
Fiona Bruce.